My guest today is Niko Hosn. Niko is the CTO at ZTX. Hey, that sounds kind of cool. CTO at ZTX. ZTX, of course, is a virtual world. It is designed to empower creators and communities. Fantastic looking Web3 stuff. We'll learn all about this today. Welcome to the show, Niko.
Thank you for having me on. Excited to be here.
Excited to have you here, Niko. Let's do what we do at the beginning of the show. It'd be cool if you could please introduce yourself. I'd love to hear a little bit of your personal and professional backstory. What have you been doing in the lead up to, becoming involved with the team at ZTX?
Yeah, definitely. So started my career about 10 years ago. 10 years ago in finance. I'd worked for a couple investment firms and ultimately moved. I was in Panama and moved back to the United States. While now I was in college, I was super into engineering and building websites and ultimately playing around with Bitcoin and tinkering with building mining rigs in my dorm room. So had always been crypto curious in the early days. And when I came back to the States, started working as a software engineer. Oddly enough, worked in industries that also face some types of regulatory scrutiny. So I started my career in the weed industry, building software for the weed industry. And then moved on to finance, working in TradFi, fintech as a software engineer, and ultimately decided, hey, I'm all in on crypto and transitioned to working on crypto projects. So worked as a distributed systems engineer, smart contract engineer, had been at Citigroup, and really worked in a lot of experimental verticals, I'll call them, in the early days of blockchain and smart contracts. And ultimately, prior to ZTX, was working in DeFi and the Cosmos ecosystem, and now I'm at ZTX.
Awesome. That's very interesting career path. Yeah, from finance, weed, Web3, fantastic. It's the kind of the essential building blocks of life in the 22nd century, right?
Yeah, I think you have to have somewhat of an eclectic background to work in this industry, and so it's always interesting to me to hear how my colleagues and friends have made their journey in crypto and their lives previous to crypto.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Niko, tell us a little bit about ZTX. Yeah, kind of where are we at with ZTX? What is the big idea? What is the vision? Take it away.
Yeah. So ZTX is the Web3 play on ZEPETO. ZEPETO is the largest Web2 metaverse in Asia. It is one of the largest metaverse platforms in the world. ZEPETO is very much focused on the identity and the experience of their users in the virtual space. That application over the last few years has amassed over 500 million lifetime users. There's over 3 million transactions per day that occur on the platform. Very, very, very fun stuff. Users go in, create an avatar, use that avatar to hang out with their friends, participate in various experiences on the platform, such as going to a social camping space, going and playing mini games. And so with ZTX, we wanted to experiment with bringing that on chain. And why that was important for us is these transactions that I'm talking about in the Web2 ZEPETO app, they're primarily around wearables. So going back to the identity pillar that's important for ZEPETO, the wearable assets in the game are transacted and traded for users to equip on their avatar. So I might have a Gucci sweatshirt that I see at a Gucci store or I see on the internet. And instead of purchasing that in real life, I also have the option to go and purchase that Gucci sweatshirt in the application and then use that as a piece of wearable clothing for my avatar. So for us at ZTX, when we surveyed what at the time when we started the project was sort of the metaverse, the Web3 metaverse space, we found that successful projects were focusing on one of these two pillars. They were either really, really honed into identity or really, really honed into experience. And we thought, due to our history with ZEPETO, we have a really good shot at merging these two pillars together. So we really use that as our guiding light for everything we do at ZTX. And ultimately, what we want to do is create this massive immersive social space for users to come in and purchase wearables, enjoy experiences, basically have fun in a new format.
Yep, that is very well said. And I mean, yeah, that's interesting. Kind of focusing on wearables, identity, community. And look, I must admit, I hadn't actually seen ZTX, but looking at just the website, link is in the show notes, listeners. But spoiler alert, it's simply ZTX.io. But just if you just go to the website, you can kind of get just a good idea from the kind of the I guess the teaser video trailer or whatever you want to call it on that. Maybe just talk us through a little bit about what is happening there and how is that kind of representative of the ZTX world, because it's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. So it's really interesting building a game in Web3. And I for sake of this podcast, I'll use the two Web2 and Web3 terms. But at the end of the day, what I think is required to make Web3 gaming adoption successful is to just treat it as gaming. But there are some stark differences. And so one of those I think that I'll touch on before I get to the answer is that you spend a lot of time in Web2 gaming perfecting the product before it hits market, right? You get to GM. Your GM generally has all of the first round of features that you want to ship to your users, and it's more or less a complete game. Well, in our space, I'm sure you're familiar, but there's always been this ideology of building in public and ship when it's ready and continue to iterate. And so for us, that was a really important value to hone in on when we started developing this product, and even now throughout our product lifecycle. So what you see on the site is really the intro into ZTX. And what happens in that intro is, as a new player, the game is completely free to play. You come in and you're given an avatar, the ability to create your own avatar, and you're given a handful of preset wearables. So you can go in, you can create your avatar. We have pro tooling on the actual avatar itself, so you can get very, very customized with defining things such as the height of your eyebrows or the shape and the depth of your nose. It's very, very detailed in the amount of configurations that you can make. So you get your avatar, and then the player is put on this piece of land, and this piece of land is your home. So every user, free to play or non free to play user, comes in and is given a Genesis or is given a starter home. And that starter home lives on your piece of land. You also have a area where you can farm organic resources. And then you have a material machine where you can extract various types of ores and minerals. We call that the mineral extractor. And the journey for that player that you see on the website when they go into that new land is them creating and collecting these materials and then using those materials to create pieces of furniture, pieces of wearable items. It's really somewhat of a hybrid of Animal Crossing meets The Sims. So that's phase one of the video that you saw. And we just recently released phase two, which is our first piece of map expansion. So now there's a new zone, and we can get into that if you want to as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, just keep going then. Just while we're talking about this, as the universe expands, the capabilities expand, and the kind of things you can do expand. So talk us through it, Niko.
Yeah, definitely. So going back to my earlier comment of, hey, build in public, right? Ship what you have and then iterate quickly. So in line with that philosophy, we shipped back in December the first version of our beta. We're currently still in beta. And that first version was really only the player could go to their starting piece of land, farm and collect materials and resources, and then turn those into in-game items, furniture, wearables, etc. With the latest map expansion, we released about a week and a half ago, users now have access to this zone that we call Arcadia. Arcadia is a very, very large and expansive piece of virtual real estate where you have various types of buildings. You have a gaming center, you have a financial center, you have an art center, you have a fashion center. And the players now have access to various types of mini games in Arcadia. So not only do you have the core game loop that has our players engaged in this repetitive core game cycle, but we're also expanding and adding mini activities and mini games with their own core loops and their own retention and engagement mechanisms. So, for example, I now go to Arcadia. I can teleport there from my land. I can go and play Moonshot, which is a mini golf type of activity. And then I can go play Blitz Bucket, which is a basketball game. It's a basketball mini game. And so what we're building now is really infrastructure to support various creators that come to the platform and want to expand and build on top of the experiences that we offer in-house. For us, what's really important is, there's only a certain amount of things that you can build with your own team, right? Eventually, we want to move away from most of our experiences for the players being first party developed and transition that to a third party ecosystem where anyone can come in and build games on top of ZTX, build wearables on top of ZTX, etc.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. Well, look, I'd love to just understand, a little bit more about how you see this evolving going forward. So, I'm sure you can kind of vision an in-game economy where people can trade their assets or earn from their assets. Perhaps, obviously, there's a token. There's land game economy. So it's kind of like the full Web3 metaverse vision, I guess. Just link all that together and how you kind of see it evolving over the next 2-3 years.
Yeah, that's a very long time frame. So I'll take it in chunks.
Sure.
So it's really interesting to me. And if I veer off from the question, feel free to just kind of point me in the right direction. But I think the players that we have in Web3 gaming at the moment, they're very much focused on financial gain. We haven't yet reached the point in time where players that are playing Web3 games are playing them because they're truly fun. And so as somebody that's building a Web3 game, it's a very careful balance of balancing, okay, we need to make sure that we take care of the players that we have today, but not jeopardize the players that we'll have tomorrow. And I think that tipping point is coming within the next year. We're starting to see not only ZTX, but tons of other games in the ecosystem becoming more and more advanced. The graphic fidelity is honestly starting to get incredible. The onboarding experiences are getting better. It's very interesting to me. But to bring that back into your question, so one thing has been tremendously important for the success of ZEPETO was the relationship that creators developed with the platform. And so by creators, I mean content creators for wearable assets, so digital fashion creators, digital fashion designers, and also third-party developers. So smaller to not so small indie gaming teams that want to come in and build experiences where there are users. One of the hardest things to acquire in the gaming space, obviously, is users. I know you can say that for lots of applications in crypto, but I think it's especially important for adoption of Web3 gaming. So as we think about the creator relationship that was developed with the creators on ZEPETO, we want to replicate a model where creators can come into the ZTX platform, create wearable assets, create mini game experiences, and now have this new monetization loop of not only getting paid in fiat, but getting some sort of token earnings. And it's really interesting when you think about that and you think about the two different types of user demographics. So in your Web2 user, your free-to-play user, their spending threshold is generally less than your Web3 user, right? The Web3 user has a much higher spending power per user. And when you have a product that has a ton of these Web3 users, and we start to introduce funnels for creators to monetize on that user base and create content that user base actually likes, that is not predatory and the games are fun. You introduce a really interesting new ecosystem for these Web2 creators that have not had the experience of selling out a drop, an NFT drop in the Web3 space. So I think that's very interesting. Additionally, to go back to the economics point, so our in-game economics, we tend to focus quite a bit on, and I won't take credit for this. We have an amazing game design team full of very, very intelligent economics designers, gameplay designers, etc. We tend to go with the philosophy of, hey, if it works in Web2 or if it works in gaming in general, let's try to adopt to that and let's try to mold to that. So you'll see a lot of mechanics inside of ZTX the more you play that feel similar to things that you've seen free to play or things that you've seen in existing systems.
Yep, of course, makes sense as well. So I'd love to understand some insights that you see from like the users' perspectives, like user metrics, just in terms of how you are growing your community. Things like, I don't know, like average time spent in an environment and the kind of things people are doing, any kind of positive feedback or negative feedback that you're getting that's kind of driving your product decisions going forward. What are your users telling you? What do the metrics say?
Yeah, definitely. So on average, our users spend about 27 minutes in game. And I think a lot of that is tied directly to the core game loop and the fact that it is not entirely passive, but it is somewhat passive in its current state. So user goes in, user clicks a button, they have to wait some amount of time for the action to be completed. An example would be, hey, I want to go in and I want to harvest a piece of silk. Okay, well, that harvest cycle takes 15 minutes. Let me go into my house, sit on the couch, do a couple things here and there. And then I'll come back, harvest that. Okay, I'm done for my session. We have and are actively working on bringing more engagement layers in to fill the void of that core game loop passive time. It's really important for us to give users something to do so that they can make the most out of that 15 minutes that they're spending while they're waiting for that thing to happen. And so an example I can give you is with this new Arcadia launch. Okay, I have selected to harvest a material. I'm going to head to Arcadia while that material is harvesting. And then I'm going to go and complete this mini game that will award me some points. And these points, I can then later go back and transfer and translate into an additional material that will help me build that piece of furniture, build that wearable that I like much quicker. So really, it's about adding additional layers of complexity to the core game loop, but also adding new engagement layers and new retention mechanics. Those are generally what our players are asking about. I will also touch on one of the largest pain points for our user base. And whenever we do a marketing campaign or a large activation, it's really difficult to connect to like a standard MetaMask account inside of a native Unity game. It's extremely difficult. We work with some of the best infrastructure partners in the space. And this continues to be a pain point where the user has to go into the native game. They have to have their phone. They have to scan. Once they scan, they have to tap a button on their phone and then go back to the game. Obviously, that's not a scalable onboarding or a scalable mechanism to get into any application. So we're actively working on ways to improve that piece of the onboarding experience. It's great if you want to log in with email or if you want to log in with your Twitter account or your Gmail account. Super easy, super seamless. But for the more crypto native user, there is definitely a higher friction point with the onboarding process with like your traditional MetaMask wallet.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it kind of, I guess, in a roundabout way, it's actually really relevant to a piece that you wrote a couple of days ago. I saw it on Blockworks called Ethereum and Bitcoin are holding us back, Niko. So love you to just maybe Yeah, just give us the kind of the nutshell of what you're saying here, and how you kind of see, because this is really about, the best possible building blocks for Web3, which is kind of, your specialty area. So just yeah, why are Ethereum and Bitcoin holding us back, and what is the way forward in your view, Niko?
Yeah. So definitely, this is a piece of the puzzle that we're actually quite passionate about, and have been for the last couple of months. So, some context here. When we're talking about onboarding and having some shared user pool with our with the Web2 ZEPETO app, it's really important for us to think about, well, how do you achieve that? Is the infrastructure that you're building on able to support that? And so I'll give you an example. Last year, before we had our Genesis Home NFT mint on Arbitrum, we had a activation where we briefly ran a targeted campaign in the Web2 ZEPETO app, and that targeted campaign actually onboarded, I think the number was about 212,000 users in under 12 hours. That was the first sort of litmus test, if you will, for us to say, hey, can we pull something like this off? We ended up breaking our account extraction provider. We ended up breaking a ton of different infrastructure pieces, but we did it, and it was really really it was a really really big achievement for us at the project. What ended up happening though is we had a massive spike in gas. It ended up costing quite a bit for us to get those users onboarded and get those users minting NFTs. Now, one of the topics that I'm most passionate about at this point in time is this concept of modular blockchain. So, being that my background prior to ZTX was heavy in Cosmos, this concept of app chains is not a foreign concept to myself. And really, where I think the future is headed is ecosystems or projects being purpose built on top of these layer twos, on top of these L1s, such as Ethereum, where you're basically offloading the execution of your application to your own environment, but you're relying on the downstream effects of the security of the network that you're building on top of. So we're very bullish on modular blockchains, and we're actually working on deploying our own blockchain. And the reason for that is we intend on having a massive influx of users in Q3 and that towards the end of Q3 and Q4 this year. And quite frankly, I just don't think I don't think it's feasible to support that on the network that we're on now. And the reason for that is because the Web2 user in the first part of their user journey, they're not going to want anything to do with understanding, hey, what is gas? Why do I need to pay money for this transaction to happen? So in order to create an environment where, let's say, the first 5 transactions, as an example, are sponsored for that user, it's not feasible for us to do that on any network besides our own. So this, among many other reasons, is why we're so bullish on modular chains and building our own execution environment, as I'll call it. But generally, I think if you look at ETH and BTC, they're really first iterations of the technology, and they continue to improve and continue to get better over time. But it's up to us, the builders, to continue to take things to the next level. And I think we hit limits, and eventually there will be, after layer 3s, there will be a layer 4 and a layer 5. And I know there's memes all about this on Twitter, but it is the natural evolution of this technology, and I'm quite excited for it.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, Niko, and hard to argue with any of that. I think, Bitcoin is doing just fine as, whatever you want to call it, digital money or sound money, digital gold, a store of value. But yeah, if you're going to onboard millions and millions and millions of people into, metaverses, whatever you want to call them, we need new ways of doing that. You said, Niko, that you anticipate effectively doing just that, onboarding millions of people into, I guess, your ecosystem in Q3 and Q4 this year. So just curious as to, why that is, and also maybe just talk to the kind of the wider point, which is, anyone that is building in Web3 or metaverse, that's the question they're asking is, where does that next wave of millions of users come from?
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting because throughout my crypto journey, I've been in the space for a while. At least I like to think it's a while. I had this conversation with one of the other members of the ZTX founding team the other day. I had thought for a while that a mass adoption and a mass influx of users, oddly enough, was going to be healthcare and some sort of application of the healthcare system. And we don't have to get into that, but about 4 years ago, the switch really hit for me. It's like, okay, DeFi is complicated. My mother and my father it's very difficult to explain these concepts to them. It's going to be a while before we get to a consumer friendly version of DeFi, in my opinion. And I had this sort of light bulb moment that said, hey, gaming is a really unique opportunity to onboard a mass amount of users without them really even knowing, right? And so from my perspective, I think we're seeing it we're seeing it now. We're seeing more and more Web2 studios, more Web2 gaming studios that are starting to dabble with either integrating pieces of Web3 technology into their existing platform, or as in our case, developing these entirely new products that are sort of a hybrid of what I would call like Web 2.5. So I think, really dialing into the onboarding of like these gamers is very important for us. And the reason I say Q3, Q4 is our thesis from the beginning has always been the game needs to be fun. The game needs to be fun. The game needs to be fun. And we have been building towards that. We're not there yet. There are elements of fun, but it's not a complete experience. And we want to provide an experience that is close to what you would see in a Web2 product. And we feel like we're going to be ready for that Q3, Q4.
Awesome. Well, we will look forward to that. I suppose as we finish up this part of the podcast, then, Niko, I guess just invite you again to, tell people where they can go to learn more about ZTX and what you guys are building, and just make the case for why people should jump in and try out the experience and stick around with what you guys have coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, definitely. So for ZTX, as Andy said, you can go directly to ztx.io. You can get a good sense of what we're building and also download the game from there. The game is in beta right now and it is not access gated. So anybody can go and download it. It works on PC and Mac. Our ZTX Twitter is ZTX @ZTX official. Make sure definitely follow us on Twitter. We run a lot of very fun competitions, social-based competitions on Twitter. So go in and create and craft and showcase your wares on Twitter. A lot of fun stuff occurs there. Look, I think at the end of the day, what we're trying to build is a place where you can spend time with your friends online. And ultimately, we're seeing human relationships transition into more of that as the communication and retention mechanism for relationships. And what we're trying to do is build this space that is fun, that you can hang out with your friends, that you can create, that you can ultimately do whatever you want to do online. And so I think that is a anchor point for what we're building. And yeah, looking forward to hearing about people's journeys on Twitter.
Awesome. Thank you, Niko. I think what we do now is we will finish off the podcast by running you through the very famous crypto conversation hot take round. Are you up for it?
Yes, let's do it.
Let's do it. Question one is a bit of a funny one for you, Niko. I think I know what you'll say, but the question is, where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
Bitcoin is my forever love, but multi-chain is the future. As a builder and not an investor, active or passive, I believe in multi-chain, and that is where my conviction lies.
Yep. All right. Well, what would you say then is your firmest conviction crypto opinion?
Oh, that is a tough one. As it relates to gaming, I will say that we all need to build fun games. If we build fun games, users will come.
Yeah.
And so I challenge everyone I challenge everyone, my colleagues, to build fun games.
Yeah. It sounds simple when you say it like that, right?
Yeah.
Just make it fun.
Yeah.
Just make it fun.
Yeah.
Speaking of gaming, I mean, gaming is big all around the world, but it's really big in Asia. It feels like kind of metaverse Web3 stuff is really big in Asia. It certainly is for ZTX. Why is that, do you think, Niko?
So I think I think it's really interesting to think about what's culturally accepted in various parts of the world and how public you can be about certain things that you like to do in your life, certain types of clothing that you like to wear, if you have tattoos, if you don't have tattoos. And I think in various cultures, not just in Asia and that part of the world, but even to an extent, here in the US, I think it's really important, and it's really interesting to make it accessible for people to express their true selves. And what better way to do that than in a digital format if you can't do it where you are? I would think that hopefully that answers your question.
Yep. Very well, actually. I like it. Okay. Look, Niko, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. As a blockchain builder, you'd be very familiar with that kind of thinking. 10 years is a long time in Web3 and blockchain. But yeah, I guess, ZTX, what does it look like in 10 years' time?
Yeah. So ultimately, I think at a point, I don't know when that point is, but between now and 10 years, we really transition into this community owned and community developed ecosystem where people are coming in, creating experiences for the users. Users are coming in, creating experiences for each other. And it evolves into this, I know it's somewhat cliche, but really this Ready Player One type of online digital ecosystem where you can do anything. If you want to be, if you want to, play an Among Us type game and be an assassin, you can be an assassin. If you want to be a firefighter, you can be a digital firefighter. I think the possibilities are endless. Our responsibility as the builders of ZTX is to be good stewards that provide the best infrastructure for you to express your creativity in whatever way, shape, or form that may be.
Yep, I love it. Very well said. All right. William Gibson famously said, Niko, that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. With that in mind, can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people aren't aware of it?
Oh, I was just using the new GPT launch, new GPT launch that happened a couple of weeks ago, right before this call, and I mean, the amount of my workload that has transitioned to not fully to AI, but really been enhanced by AI over the last 6 months is incredible. I think if, you know, anyone is entering software engineering or entering any type of technology role, learning that skill immediately is probably the thing that will put you on the best career trajectory. I really, I don't hear enough about the advancements in AI in the news. It's very much surface level. It's very much like how crypto was many years ago, right? All of these amazing things are happening, but there is no cycle that's picking up on it. So if I had to say one thing, trying to keep it non-crypto, it would be AI, and the rate at which AI is progressing. It's fascinating.
Yeah, look, Niko, I couldn't agree more. And I'm sure you're talking about ChatGPT 4.0. Look, I was using it before the show myself, because as soon as you start using 4.0, it's like next level. Once you can evolve voice, audio, and just upload pictures and video and just all that kind of stuff and have the AI interact with it, man, it is a game changer, right?
Yeah, it's incredible. It's very much incredible. I'm excited to be on vacation, and hopefully be on vacation at some point, and use live translation and make my life easier.
Yes, indeed. All right, brings us nicely to the final question, really, Niko, which is, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, or TV show?
Oh, that is such a tough question. Um, if I had to pick one, and maybe it's at the top of my mind because I watched it most recently, it would be Ready Player One.
Yeah. Hey, it's a great choice. Great movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, you couldn't ask for a better metaverse reference. Ready Player One. There you go. All right. This was a lot of fun, Niko. Thank you so much for coming on the show and spending some time with us today. Again, just take it out by telling people where they can find you on Twitter, and of course why they should come and get immersed in the wonderful world of ZTX.
Yeah, definitely. So again, thank you for having me on. This has been great. Folks can find me on Twitter at Niko Builds, NIKOHBUILDS, and same for Substack, nikobuilds.substack.com. I would advise following myself and also the ZTX Twitter account. We have a lot of alpha coming up on a lot of our new projects in the next couple of months. So if you haven't checked us out, check us out. And thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you, Niko. All the best, and bye for now.
Thank you.
All right, there you go. There was Niko from ZTX. Niko is cool. Ready Player One. Can't go wrong with Ready Player One. And yeah, have you tried ChatGPT 4.0? Man, really is next level in terms of just how seamlessly these AI tools can begin to fit into your, not just your workflow, but your just life in general. And pretty I can see just how very soon it'll be hard to imagine living life without them. Amazing stuff. Welcome to the super future. All right, folks, that is it for today. This was another show. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave New Coin. Bye for now. See ya.